The purpose of these lessons is to show you the logic behind the most basic Chinese characters, beginning with the simplest pictograms, and later combining these elements to create more complex characters. This lesson is a continuation of Lesson 87, and the last of 3 installments introducing common characters based on 盒, a container and its cover or lid. This 3rd installment contains 7 characters, 6 of which contain 和 and 1 which does not. The first new combination is the heart radical, 心 with 和, literally meaning to apply the heart, to match one's mind with the job at hand. In other words, to be attentive and diligent, which is the appropriate mindset, the most suitable way to do anything. This character is pronounced 4th tone, 恰, cha. What's appropriate and suitable is precisely the right way. So the phrase 恰好 now translates as just right, precisely, or exactly. 你们来的时候，我恰好外出了。I happened to be out when you arrived. In other words, precisely at that moment, I was out. 他们2个的生日，恰好都是后天。As luck would have it, their birthdays are both the day after tomorrow. It's pure luck that their birthdays fall precisely on the same day. 讲道者的行为恰好否定了他常说的话。The minister's actions belie what he so often preaches. 你这个话不多不少，恰好道出了我的心情。What you just said is exactly how I feel, no more, no less. 你买的货品大小可能不恰好相等。The items you purchased might, unfortunately, not be the same size. 恰好相反 is the way to say something is the exact opposite. 你今天的说法跟上个月的恰好相反。What you're saying today is the exact opposite of what you said last month. 别听他的，事情的真相恰好相反。Don't listen to him. The true situation is just the opposite. Another way to express 恰好 is simply to repeat 恰 and say 恰恰。你想出这个点子恰恰是时候。You've come up with this idea at just the right time. 恰恰在那个时候，你打电话给我了。Precisely at that moment, you called me. 恰好相反 can also change to 恰恰相反 with no difference in meaning. 我的问题跟他的恰恰相反。My problem is the exact opposite of his. 电影中的女主角跟我想象的恰恰相反。The leading lady in the film is the polar opposite of how I imagined her to be. In Lesson 77, we learned 4th tone 当 as in 正当 and 得当, both of which phrases also have the connotation of appropriate, suitable, or proper. So it's not unusual to pair 恰 with 当 and say 恰当。这个名称不是很恰当。This name is not very suitable. 我们在等待恰当的时机。We're waiting for the opportune moment. 他那样解说问题颇为恰当。Her explanation of the problem was quite appropriate. 你讲的道理是再恰当不过了。Your reasoning is right on target. 这几天 是找工作恰当的时机。These next few days are a good time to look for a job. 父母介入儿女的生活恰当吗？ Is it appropriate for parents to interfere in their children's lives? 中国的特使如此讲话，不十分恰当。The Chinese envoy's words were rather inappropriate. 若用得得当，这几个字倒是恰当的好字眼。If used properly, these words are quite fitting. The four-character idiom 恰如其分 means to the proper extent, in appropriate measure, apt or suitable. 这是一封恰如其分的介绍信。This letter of introduction is accurate with no undue embellishments. 这字眼用得恰如其分。This word is well chosen. 心无二用，古话说得恰如其分。The old adage, you cannot do two things at once, is spot on. 他是我家恰如其分的再生父母。It's no exaggeration to say he's our family's savior. 国家派出去的特使说话必须恰如其分。Our country's envoys must speak precisely and appropriately. Our second character is composed of the water radical 水 and 和, also pronounced fourth tone 恰. It literally means to apply water, or to lubricate so that two sides move smoothly when in contact. This is especially relevant when two people meet to negotiate an agreement. Any friction or lack of harmony will cause the discussions to fail. For this reason, the most common use of 恰 is when contacting an individual or an organization for discussion, usually in reference to a job offer. 译者内洽 Interested persons inquire within. 译者 naturally means a willing or interested person. 外出洽公 out on a business call. Literally, out to contact public affairs. 面洽 refers to a face-to-face meeting. 电话可以省去面洽的时间。A phone call can eliminate the need for a personal interview. 电洽 is an inquiry by telephone. 想多了解，请电洽当地的机构。For more information, contact our organization nearest you. Today's third character is far more useful, but has a somewhat convoluted origin. It started out as 禾 with the grass radical 草 on top, meaning a short plant with seed pods, such as beans and peas. 禾 refers to the two sides of a pod coming together to contain the beans inside. It's pronounced 打, but is rarely used today. Apparently, in ancient times, it was borrowed to mean the back and forth of conversation, one party responding to the other, in other words, to answer or reply. For some unknown reason, the grass radical was then used interchangeably with the bamboo radical. After the bamboo radical 打 replaced grass radical 打, the one with grass on top became a phonetic for other characters, which we shall soon see. Today, the bamboo radical 打 is the proper one meaning to respond, answer, or reply. It's usually pronounced second tone, da, but in some phrases, first tone, da. Examples with first tone, da, will have to wait for a future lesson, because our vocabulary so far lacks the characters that it's most often paired with. Second tone, 答话, is a verb meaning to answer or respond orally. 你为什么不答话呢? Why don't you answer me? 有人在吗? 没有人答话. Is anybody here? There was no response. 从他答话的口气听得出来他的不悦. From the tone of his reply, one could tell he was annoyed. 回答 means to answer or respond, but can also be used as the noun response. 这些问题使我无法回答. These questions have left me unable to respond. 我想一想，后天再给你回答. Let me think it over, and I'll give you my answer the day after tomorrow. 他们回答说，他们无能为力. They answered to say there was nothing they could do. 他气呼呼地走了，不想给予回答. She left in a huff, without bothering to give a response. 你要我走开，就得回答我的问题. If you want to get rid of me, just answer my question. 这个问题的回答好像是肯定的. The response to this question appears to be affirmative. 答得上来 and 答不上来 are verb compounds meaning to be able or unable to think up an appropriate response. The use of 上 gives the feeling of it's coming, but has or has not arrived. 我一时答不上来. I can't tell you the answer off the top of my head. 要是答不上来，就不用填. If you can't think of the answer, just leave it blank. 这个问题你一定答得上来. I'm sure you can answer this question. 答不出来 is another negative variation, but this time the person cannot answer at all. 你这样追问，可是他答不出来. You're insisting on an answer, but he can't give you one. 解答 can be either to answer or explain, because of the addition of 解 from lesson 68, meaning to butcher an ox, which entailed cutting and pulling it apart. Explaining also requires reducing something to smaller pieces. 这是我小时候一直无法解答的问题. As a child, I could never come up with any explanation for that. 作答 is another, less common way to say answer or reply, but is especially appropriate if the response is in writing, as on a test. 我问他去哪里，可是他不作答. I asked him where he was going, but he didn't answer. 你要问他本人，我无法为他作答. You'll have to ask her. I cannot answer for her. 不作答的问题，电脑会当作否定回答. The computer will consider any question left unanswered as a negative response. 问答 refers to question and answer drills, or the question and answer sessions after a speech. 问答题 Q&A drills. 讲解后，请多留一点时间做问答. After your explanation, please leave some time for questions. 一言不答 is an idiom meaning to say nothing. 歹徒垂头坐在那里，一言不答. The criminal sat with his head down, refusing to answer. 答到 is usually found in the written dialogue of a story. Another way to express he replied or she retorted. 打死他，他不肯招认，首未达到. Even if you beat him to death, he won't own up to it, the guard said. 请给我机会说话，男生答道. Give me a chance to speak, the boy retorted. 称 from lesson 71 also means to say or to tell, so it sometimes pairs with 答. 歹徒答称没有看过那个人. The offender replied that he'd never seen that person before. 答理 also means to answer, but adds 理 to mean acknowledge or ignore a person, as in the phrase 不要理他. Some Chinese pronounce this phrase with first tone 答理, but second tone 答理 is also common. 我向他打招呼，可是他不搭理我. I said hello, but she ignored me. Today's fifth character takes the grass radical 打 as both phonetic and semantic elements and adds a hand radical 手 on the left. It's pronounced first tone 搭. Since 打 means a bean pod, or two sides joined together, the hand radical extends the idea to indicate bringing two things together. This can include many everyday actions, such as hanging clothing on a rack, erecting a makeshift structure or pitching a tent, teaming up with a partner, lifting heavy objects together, adding more people or money, and most common of all, taking a train, bus, or ship. I'll start with clothing and towels. 她把外衣搭在椅背上. She draped her coat over the back of the chair. 男招待员手上搭着白毛巾走了出来. The server, white towel hung over one arm, approached us. Next, we have 搭车, to go by, some form of public transportation. 你们要搭火车去吗? Do you want to go by train? 我明天一大早搭头班车回去. I'm taking the first bus home early tomorrow morning. 搭公车到你家里的小镇需要多久时间? How long does it take to get to your town by bus? As I mentioned, 搭 can refer to erecting a structure. 山上的小凉亭是用竹木等等搭成的. The little wayside pavilion on the mountain is made of bamboo and other materials. We learned long ago in these lessons that the color white, 白, can also mean blank or empty. So the phrase 白搭 is an expression meaning futile, to no avail, literally pointlessly put together. 你今天的一切努力不会白搭. The hard work you're putting into this today will not be fruitless. 我们为了这个话题吵架是白搭. Us arguing about this is pointless. 你等待她是白搭，她不可能嫁给你. Waiting around for her is futile. She will not possibly marry you. 跟她讲道理是白搭，她不会理你的. Trying to reason with him is a waste of time. He won't listen to you. 搭上关系 is an expression meaning to strike up a relationship or establish contact with someone. 我通常不跟班上的男女生搭上关系. I prefer not to socialize with students in my classes, male or female. 搭架子 to build a framework or erect scaffolding is one way to say to put on airs, to be arrogant. 这个画家闻名天下，可是从来不搭架子. This world-famous painter never puts on airs. 你若不开口，别人会认为你在搭架子. If you say nothing, people will think you're displaying a holier-than-thou attitude. To lift something together is another use of 搭. 我们把这大理石像搭到卡车上. Let's hoist this marble statue up on the truck. 我们一起把书架搭起来. Let's lift up this bookshelf together. Bringing two things together naturally leads to something being added on. 搭上. 搭上你，我们才有5个人. Including you, we've still only got 5 people. 你的工作比以往多，我给你搭个人吧. Your workload is heavier than before. I'll send someone to help. Today's 6th character was originally part of a transliteration of the Sanskrit word stupa for a Buddhist pagoda, a tower-like structure containing sacred Buddhist texts. Chinese at first transcribed Sanskrit stupa into 3 syllables, 祖塔坡, but eventually dropped the first and last characters, retaining the middle one, ta, to mean a pagoda or any tower-like building. Any large cistern containing water on a building rooftop or municipal water supply plant is called a 水塔. 屋顶上有个水塔吗? Is there a water cistern on the roof? 那个水塔上下有50米高. That water tower is 50 meters from top to bottom. When referring to an actual pagoda of several stories in height, Chinese uses the term 宝塔. 山巅上有个宝塔. There's a pagoda on the mountain's summit. 寺中的宝塔高7层，可以上去塔顶看. There's a 7-story pagoda in the temple complex. You can ascend to the top to take in the view. Chinese uses 金字塔 to describe a pyramid shape or an actual pyramid, because it looks somewhat like the character for gold, 金。金字塔里机关重重，可要小心哦。There are numerous traps inside the pyramids. You must be careful. To foil grave robbers, the ancient Egyptian pyramid builders apparently devised false passages and various traps inside the pyramids. That sentence was in reference to them. Now we need to review the character E from lesson 14, because it enters into our final character. If you recall, E depicts the final hours of a mother's pregnancy, with a fully developed fetus about to be born. E means to stop, end, or the adverb already. Originally, the end of gestation. E contributes both sound and meaning to the character E from lesson 53, which depicts an arrow stopping because its target has been reached. It's most commonly found in classical Chinese, serving as a period or full stop. Also in lesson 53, we learned the combination of the hand radical 菽 with E to create a new character pronounced I or I, originally meaning to approach an attack from behind, hitting one's target with bare hands instead of arrows. Now we have that same E phonetic, but with the earth radical 土, meaning fine dust or dirt. It's not a particularly useful character, except that it's often used to transliterate foreign words. And today, we need it to transliterate the country name for Egypt, 埃及. If 埃及 doesn't sound very much like the English pronunciation Egypt, that's because the Chinese version is an approximation of Latin Aegyptus in the Cantonese dialect, from which most Chinese place names were adopted. My knowledge of Cantonese is minimal, but I do know that Mandarin 埃及 in Cantonese would be closer to Aegypt with a P at the end, very similar to the Taiwanese pronunciation. Anyway, we want 埃及 today because that's where the world's most famous pyramids are found. 古埃及, ancient Egypt. 古埃及的大金字塔是件了不起的成就. The Great Pyramid of ancient Egypt is a stunning achievement. 古埃及大金字塔是世界七大奇景之一. The Great Pyramid of ancient Egypt is one of the 7 wonders of the world. Here is our color chart with today's 7 characters. 达, 搭, 塔, 恰, another, 恰, 达, and I. Here's our recap from today's lesson. 1. Of the 7 new characters in this lesson, 6 of them contain 和, a container with its lid, the basis for most of the characters in the last 3 lessons. The first character was the heart radical, with 和, meaning to apply one's mind and be attentive to the task at hand, which is extended to include being precise and exact when doing anything. Dictionaries from over 1,000 years ago say that "he" serves as the phonetic, so I colored it purple. But the modern pronunciation has certainly diverged significantly. 2. A second character, also pronounced "cja," replaces the heart with the water radical to indicate the application of water to lubricate two objects in direct contact. From there, the reduction of friction was extended to mean two or more people making contact, hopefully in a smooth, frictionless manner. 3. Second tone "da" with 草字头 meant a short, seed-pod-bearing plant. It was rare because there were other characters for beans and peas. Eventually, the idea of a seed pod with its two matching halves was applied to conversations between two people, one person responding to the other. 4. There was a similar character pronounced "da" or "da" with a bamboo radical in place of the grass. It originally meant to mend a fence by adding new bamboo slats where the old ones were missing or broken. Hence the combination of bamboo, 竹字头, and 禾. This was also a quite specific and rarely needed character, and at some point took on the same meaning as the bean plant, 打, the one with 草字头. Modern Chinese now uses the bamboo radical 打 for to answer, respond, or reply, while relegating the grass radical 打 to a phonetic element. 5. By adding a hand radical to the da phonetic, we have the first tone character da, basically meaning to use the hand to bring two things together, from hanging clothing, pitching a tent, teaming up with a partner, and especially common, taking public transportation. 6. The sixth character, ta, was a Chinese character referring to a multi-storied Buddhist structure for storing religious manuscripts, called a stupa in Sanskrit. Of the three characters chosen to transliterate this foreign word, only ta remains. 金字塔 means a pyramid because it resembles the character for metal, 金. And since the most famous pyramids are in Egypt, I introduced one extra character made up of components we'd already learned in previous lessons to transliterate the sound I, the first part of the name of the country, Aichi. Now you will find a short quiz on double, triple character, and longer expressions. Answer using only the characters learned so far. Thank you for watching and listening.